Nia Johnson had never fully embraced the title that had been pinned on her by the press, the Golden Heiress. Yes, she was just 28 years old and already sat atop a tech empire that she'd built with her own grit and resourcefulness, but she never boasted about it. For every flattering headline that praised her as the next big thing in Silicon Valley, she could feel the cynicism from those who doubted her capabilities, especially her own stepfamily. On the surface, her life glittered. She lived in a penthouse apartment overlooking the city skyline, with modern floor-to-ceiling windows that let in both sunshine and the envious eyes of passers-by who craned their necks upward. As the founder of a cutting-edge software company specializing in data security, she was constantly juggling high-stakes deals, investor calls, and cross-continental partnerships. Whether she liked it or not, people whispered about her bank account whenever she walked by in designer heels. That morning, Nia scrolled through her social media feed and noticed a new wave of viral articles praising her as the tech princess with the Midas touch. She sighed, shutting her phone off and setting it on her marble kitchen counter. She was proud of her accomplishments, but something about these headlines felt hollow. Perhaps it was because, in her experience, people only seemed to notice the glitz, never the darker parts of her journey. Memories of her stepmother, Karen, and her stepbrother, Zane, flickered across her mind. She remembered how they'd swooped in like uninvited storms after her father had passed away years ago. Suddenly, her quiet, affectionate family dynamic turned into a battleground for attention, resources, and emotional leverage. With her mother gone since she was a toddler, Nia had found herself alone, watching as Karen acted like the newly crowned lady of the house. Zane, only a couple of years older than Nia, wasted no time making her life miserable in subtle, sneering ways. These thoughts clouded Nia's mind even as she tried to focus on her business. She was successful now, arguably unstoppable. But in quiet moments, the question remained, did anyone love me before I became wealthy? It felt as if she had to buy people's affection or loyalty. Ms. Johnson, her executive assistant's voice buzzed in over her Bluetooth speakers, "Your car is ready downstairs. You have a meeting in 30 minutes with the new investors." "Thank you, Iris," Nia replied, exhaling softly. "I'll be down in 5. She tried to shake off the morning's introspection. But as she prepared to leave her penthouse, she couldn't ignore the unsettling feeling that money was all people cared about, especially the family she was supposed to trust the most. Little did she know, her suspicions would soon be tested in the most dramatic way imaginable. Evening fell, and Nia found herself flipping through an old photo album she had stashed in her closet. She was still wearing her business suit from a day jam-packed with board meetings. Her hair, usually sleek and impeccably styled, was beginning to frizz at the edges from long hours of stress. She turned page after page, staring at images that conjured bittersweet memories. There was a picture of her on her 10th birthday, wearing a bright pink party dress next to her father. He was smiling with pride, his hand on her shoulder. Her mother had already passed away at that point, so birthdays were always a mixture of celebration and the sense of something missing. Then, the photos changed drastically. Karen appeared in the background. Nia recalled the day her father had introduced Karen as his new wife. Nia was 13. Instantly, the house she had known transformed. Karen took liberties with the decor, turning it into a place that felt sterile, like a hotel lobby with expensive but impersonal furniture. Zane moved in a few months later, dragging along stacks of video games and a cynicism that rivaled any adult's. Nia was still flipping through when her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number lit up the screen. "Hey Nia, it's Aunt Dee. I got a new phone. Let's chat soon. Miss you, sweetheart." Aunt Dee was the only other relative on her father's side who'd ever shown her genuine warmth. She'd been mostly distant because of Karen's controlling nature. Yet, Aunt Dee's kindness had glowed like a small beacon in Nia's tumultuous childhood. Nia smiled as she responded, feeling a pang of nostalgia. "Sure, Aunt Dee. Let's catch up soon," she typed back. The truth was, after her father died, Nia had felt more alone than ever. Karen had commandeered everything, finances, decisions, even the emotional climate of the household. While her father was alive, he had tried to shield Nia from Karen's manipulations, but once he was gone, Nia was fully exposed. Zane had teased her endlessly, making snide remarks about how she was nothing without Daddy's money. But ironically, or perhaps fittingly, that very ridicule spurred Nia to push harder in life. She studied incessantly, entered every science competition she could find, and dreamed of building a future so secure that she'd never have to rely on Karen or Zane for anything. Over time, that dream evolved into a mission to create her own company. Yet, no matter how high Nia climbed, she couldn't silence the echo of those doubts. Would these people love me if I had nothing to offer? As she closed the album, she saw a final photo of her father holding her at age 5. He had the widest smile, and so did she. "I hope you're proud of me, Dad," she whispered. "Sometimes, I wish you could see all this. Maybe things would be different if you were here." She set the album aside and turned off the bedroom lights, sinking into the plush comfort of her bed. Tomorrow would bring more responsibilities. Yet tonight, she wrestled with the hidden wounds left by her stepfamily. Little did she know, these wounds were about to be reopened in a way that would alter the course of her life, and theirs. The reading of Grandpa Roy's will had come as a shock a few years back. Nia was sitting in the polished office of a legal firm downtown, a place that smelled of leather and old books. She'd been under the impression that her grandfather, her father's father, had left her some sentimental items, perhaps a small trust. She had no idea he'd left nearly everything to her. The lawyer, a man with salt and pepper hair and tired eyes, had cleared his throat before explaining in a deliberate tone, "Ms. Johnson, your grandfather specified in his last will and testament that the entirety of his estate, including a substantial monetary inheritance, real estate holdings, and personal assets, would pass to you upon his death." Her jaw dropped. There must be a mistake. Shouldn't Karen, my stepmother, be involved in this? He skimmed the document. No mention of Karen. There is a clause about your Aunt Dee receiving a small stipend if she wishes, but the bulk goes to you. Nia recalled how her grandfather had been one of the few to see Karen's behavior for what it was. He disliked her domineering nature and saw how she undermined Nia's confidence. Grandpa Roy had insisted on maintaining a separate relationship with Nia, often inviting her over for weekends filled with fishing trips and quiet dinners. Though Grandpa Roy never openly disparaged Karen, he made it clear in subtle ways that he didn't trust her. At the end of that meeting, the lawyer handed Nia a thick envelope of documents detailing the inheritance, money that would eventually help her fund her own startup, push her through college without debt, and give her a comfortable safety net. She decided to keep it all a secret from her stepfamily. She wanted to make her own way, prove she could achieve success without the label of family money overshadowing her every accomplishment. So she built her tech company from the ground up, skillfully blending her inheritance with strategic investments. She never boasted about Grandpa Roy's wealth. The few times Karen and Zane tried to pry into her finances, she deflected, citing NDAs with investors and complicated shareholder agreements. Even so, Karen and Zane smelled money. They didn't know exactly how much Nia had or how she got it so fast, but they were convinced she was loaded. If they had known the magnitude of Grandpa Roy's will, they likely would have tried to snatch it all. Now, as Nia sat in her office after hours, staring at the city lights through the glass, she realized the same question kept haunting her: would they still bother with me if they thought I had nothing at all? She pressed a button on her desk phone, calling her assistant. "Iris, do I have any more meetings tonight?" "No, Ms. Johnson," came the gentle voice on the other end. Nia exhaled slowly. "Great. I think I'm going to call it a night." Closing her laptop, she wondered what her grandfather would say about her plan, this idea that was beginning to form in her mind about testing the loyalty of those around her. She pictured him leaning in with a mischievous grin and whispering in his gruff voice, "Make them earn your trust, kiddo." But was she really prepared for the outcome? The next morning, Nia walked into the headquarters of her tech firm, where a large glass sign in the lobby bore the company's name, Cypher Shield Labs. The entire floor hummed with activity, engineers typing away on laptops, project managers racing from one meeting to another, and the occasional intern rushing to grab coffee for the team. Nia had founded Cypher Shield Labs when she was just 23, fresh out of grad school. She'd honed a groundbreaking approach to data encryption that caught the attention of major corporations worried about cybersecurity. Suddenly, she found herself in boardrooms with industry veterans 2 decades her senior, pitching her technology with confidence and composure. Each successful contract gave her more capital, which she reinvested into the company and her people. By the time she turned 26, Cypher Shield Labs was recognized as one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the sector. As she made her way to the elevator, employees paused to greet her. "Good morning, Ms. Johnson," they'd say, with genuine admiration. Most at Cypher Shield adored her for her fairness and for championing a culture where creativity thrived. Yet, Nia knew that in the wider world, especially in certain pockets of her personal life, people still viewed her success as an open wallet. She reached the top-floor executive suite, where Iris handed her a folder of documents needing signatures. "We also have a slight issue with the new partner in Hong Kong," Iris added, adjusting her glasses. "They want more transparency on our encryption methods. The engineers are concerned about revealing too much intellectual property." Nia skimmed the papers. "Let's schedule a video conference with their lead. I'll explain what we can share and what remains proprietary. We can't risk losing our edge." "Certainly," Iris said, making a note. While Nia delved into the day's work, overseeing expansions, signing off on marketing budgets, and brainstorming new product features, her mind kept drifting to her personal dilemma. She was tired of second-guessing whether her stepfamily would have her back if she weren't rich. It felt like a poison in her veins, a lingering cynicism about the authenticity of human relationships. By lunchtime, she realized she needed a break. She took the elevator down to a quiet cafe in the building's lobby, sitting alone with a salad she barely touched. Her phone buzzed with a name that flashed across the screen, Karen. She hesitated, chewing on her lower lip before picking it up. "Hello?" Karen's saccharine voice filled her ear. "Nia, darling. How are you?" Nia's heart rate ticked up. She tried to hide the immediate tension in her tone. "Busy, as always. Everything okay?" "Oh, yes. I was just thinking about how we never spend time together." A theatrical sigh followed. "Zane mentioned we should all have dinner soon. You know, as a family. Your father would want that." Nia stiffened. Whenever Karen invoked her father's memory, it felt like emotional manipulation. "Sure," she said, swallowing the discomfort. "Let me know when." Karen laughed lightly. "That's wonderful. I'll text you the details." "Looking forward to it, dear." When the call ended, Nia stared at her phone, her appetite completely gone. She felt uneasy about an upcoming family dinner. She recalled how Karen would often mask her own greed under a veneer of motherly concern. Zane was no better. He usually turned every conversation into a pitch for money or investments in his ill-conceived ventures. Looking at the swirl of strangers milling about the cafe, Nia made a decision: enough is enough. Let's see if they care when I tell them I'm broke. She didn't know exactly how to pull off such a ruse yet, but the seeds of the plan were firmly planted. A week later, Aunt Dee called Nia with unexpected news. "Sweetheart, I've invited Karen and Zane for Thanksgiving dinner at my place. And I'd like you to come too." Nia pressed the phone closer to her ear. She was in her penthouse again, sipping a green smoothie after a long day at the office. "You're inviting all of them?" she asked, eyebrows raised. Aunt Dee usually avoided big family gatherings because she disliked drama. A nervous chuckle echoed through the receiver. I know. But it's Thanksgiving. I thought maybe it would be nice to have everyone under one roof for once. It's been ages since we've had a real family moment. And maybe I'm hoping that some bridges can be mended." "I appreciate the thought," Nia said softly, "but you realize how it usually goes. Karen and Zane only come around if there's something in it for them." Aunt Dee sighed. "I can't deny that. But look, I'm hoping for the best. Maybe they've changed. I want to believe in second chances. Nia wanted to believe that too, but her skepticism ran deep. Still, Aunt Dee was her only living blood relative besides distant cousins she barely knew. If Aunt Dee was making an effort, perhaps Nia should too. All right, Nia relented. I'll be there. I promise. Thank you, sweetheart, Aunt Dee said, voice tinged with relief. I'll text you the time and what you can bring. After they hung up, Nia opened her calendar on her laptop and marked the date. She wondered what fresh angle Karen and Zane might try this time. Would they guilt-trip her for money? Would they feign interest in her business? She was resolved to remain polite for Aunt Dee's sake. But she also felt a new eagerness to set her plan into motion. Something about this Thanksgiving dinner felt like the perfect staging ground for her test. If she announced her financial ruin in a dramatic yet believable way, she might see who actually cared about her as a person. The stakes were high, but her heart told her it was worth the risk. She closed her laptop and gazed out the window, eyes scanning the city lights twinkling below. The biggest question was, am I emotionally prepared for the possibility that they truly don't love me? She took another sip of her smoothie, bracing for what might be the most emotionally charged Thanksgiving she'd ever experienced. Chapter 6, The Mask Drops. Thanksgiving arrived with crisp autumn air and golden leaves swirling across Aunt Dee's front lawn. Aunt Dee lived in a charming suburban house, modest compared to Nia's penthouse, but brimming with warmth. The walls inside were painted soft earth tones, and family portraits lined the hallway. The delicious aroma of roasted turkey and spiced pies wafted through every corner. Nia arrived early to help with the cooking. She wore casual clothes, jeans and a simple sweater, wanting to blend in rather than stand out as the millionaire in expensive attire. Aunt Dee was already bustling in the kitchen, her apron dusted with flour. Here, stir this gravy while I finish the sweet potato casserole, Aunt Dee instructed. Nia gladly obliged, stirring in gentle circles. She found comfort in these simple tasks, reminding her of childhood moments when life was less complicated. Around midday, the doorbell rang. Nia's muscles tensed involuntarily. Aunt Dee threw her a reassuring glance before wiping her hands and heading to the front door. Moments later, Karen glided into the living room, wearing a stylish coat with an oversized designer logo. Zane followed behind, sporting a flashy watch that Nia guessed cost more than a down payment on a car. Happy Thanksgiving! Karen cooed, leaning in to hug Aunt Dee with exaggerated enthusiasm. She then turned to Nia, her eyes flickering with a hint of calculation. Nia, dear, so good to see you. Nia managed a polite nod. Hey, Karen. Zane. Zane barely acknowledged her, focusing instead on scanning the house. So, Aunt Dee, he said, setting down a bottle of what looked like expensive champagne, I hear you've been living here all alone. Must be boring. Don't you want a bigger place? Aunt Dee forced a smile. I like my small home. It's cozy. Karen chimed in with a honeyed tone, yes, Zane, not everyone needs to live in luxury to be happy. Nia bit her tongue, sensing the snark behind that statement. They all migrated to the dining room, where Aunt Dee had laid out a beautifully set table. As they seated themselves, small talk about weather and recipes began. But Nia felt like she was standing on a tightrope, waiting for the real reason Karen and Zane had come. Sure enough, as soon as dinner was served, Karen turned to Nia with a glint in her eye. So, Nia, how's business? I read an article about your new partnership in Europe. That must be lucrative, yes? Zane leaned forward. Yeah, I've been thinking about expanding my own brand. Could use some capital. If you're interested in a surefire return, I've got some can't-miss ideas. Nia took a moment to study their expressions. Karen looked smug, and Zane wore his usual grin of entitlement. She'd hoped that Aunt Dee's dinner invitation might bring out some genuine family bonding, but their greed was already front and center. She cleared her throat and offered a lukewarm smile. Business is complicated. I might be facing some big setbacks soon. Karen's face flickered with alarm before she caught herself. Setbacks? Oh, well, I'm sure you'll figure it out, dear. Zane's brow furrowed. So, does that mean you're not in a position to invest? Nia shrugged, feigning a heavy sigh. Not really. There are some legal issues looming, and finances are tight. Karen reached out to place a manicured hand on Nia's arm. You should have told us earlier, darling. Family is here to help. Maybe we can brainstorm some solutions after dinner. Nia nodded, feeling a swirl of emotions. The veneer of support felt so thin. She caught Aunt Dee watching quietly, as though trying to gauge the undercurrents. Nia knew this was only the beginning, the masks would eventually drop. Part of her was curious how far Karen and Zane would go to keep up appearances when there was seemingly no money to gain. When everyone finished dinner, they moved into the living room for dessert. Karen flipped through channels on Aunt Dee's modest TV setup, occasionally making passive-aggressive remarks about old technology. Zane scrolled on his phone, hardly contributing to the conversation. Nia sat on the couch, chocolate pie balanced on her lap, half listening to Aunt Dee's stories about the neighborhood. Her mind, however, was busy piecing together a plan. The spark had flickered during dinner when she mentioned legal issues. Now she wanted to amplify it, create a scenario so convincing that Karen and Zane would have no doubt she was on the brink of financial ruin. Just as Aunt Dee wrapped up her anecdote about a friendly neighbor, Nia turned to Karen and Zane with a weary sigh. I need to get something off my chest, she said softly, playing the role of someone burdened by secrets. Zane perked up. Karen leaned in, eyes gleaming with false concern. Are you okay, Nia? She asked, voice sweet but tinted with curiosity. Nia let her gaze drop to her half-eaten pie. I've been avoiding the topic, but my company is under investigation for some patent infringement issue. A major competitor is suing us for a ridiculous amount. If things don't go my way, I might lose everything. Karen's eyebrows shot up. Oh, my. That sounds terrible. Zane whistled, scratching the back of his neck. Is that real? Like, are you definitely going under? Nia shrugged. It's not certain, but the odds aren't looking good. I could be drained of all my assets just to cover legal costs. A heavy silence filled the room. Karen's gaze darted toward Aunt Dee, then back to Nia. She seemed to be calculating her next words. I'm sure you have some backup plan, she ventured. You've always been resourceful. Maybe, Nia said, trying to appear uncertain, but right now, I have no idea how to fix this. The lawyers are telling me to brace for the worst. Aunt Dee studied Nia with a mix of concern and confusion, but she didn't call her out. Instead, she said, if you need any moral support, we're here, dear. Karen nodded hastily. Yes, dear, we're family. Of course we're here. Nia noted how Karen didn't actually offer any tangible help. In the past, Karen might have pressured Nia to find a way to secure more money, like selling property or taking out loans. Now that she thought her golden ticket was fading, Karen seemed uncertain how to react. Zane, on the other hand, looked mildly disappointed. So, I guess this isn't a good time to talk about my business idea? Nia inhaled sharply. Zane, I'm sorry, but I can't invest right now. I can't even cover my own liabilities. There it was, a flicker of irritation on Zane's face. He quickly masked it, but not before Nia caught a glimpse. She'd planted the seed. Now, she would wait to see how it grew. Karen forced a smile. Well, we should go. It's getting late, and this has been quite a shock. I need some time to process this. Translation, we're out of here since you're no longer useful. They exchanged obligatory goodbyes. The moment the front door closed behind Karen and Zane, Nia felt an odd mixture of satisfaction and sadness. She looked at Aunt Dee, whose eyes were filled with questions. Nia, Aunt Dee said in a low voice once they were alone, are you sure about this? They're going to show their true colors, but it might hurt. I'm prepared, Nia replied, though she wasn't entirely convinced herself. I need to do this. Aunt Dee nodded slowly. Just promise me you'll be careful with your heart in all this. Okay? Nia mustered a brave smile. I promise, Aunt Dee. Deep down, she knew she was stepping onto a path lined with emotional landmines. But she also felt an overwhelming need to finally lay everything bare, to see if her stepfamily would stand by her side or vanish at the first sign of trouble. One way or another, she'd get her answer. Nia wasted no time executing the next phase of her plan. Over the following days, she made a series of moves designed to create the perfect illusion of financial distress. First, she systematically removed her presence from social media. Every account, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, she either deleted or deactivated. Her fans and followers, used to seeing her travel the world for business or flaunt new developments at Cypher Shield Labs, suddenly found her pages blank. She then sold her luxury sports car, a gleaming silver coupe she'd once been so proud of. Within a week, it was gone, replaced by a modest used sedan. Next, she gave up her penthouse lease in a high-end building, despite having bought it outright. She arranged a private agreement to rent out the penthouse to a discreet corporate client, effectively stepping away from the place. With a small suitcase and a handful of belongings, she moved into a nondescript apartment in a working-class neighborhood. The building was old, the paint peeling in the hallways, and the elevator often made unsettling clunking sounds. It was a world away from the opulence she'd grown accustomed to. Are you sure this is what you want? Aunt Dee asked when she helped Nia lug a few boxes into the cramped living space. You don't have to go this far. It's the only way, Nia said, wiping sweat from her forehead. They need to believe I've lost everything. She was thorough, even transferring the bulk of her funds into a trust account that wouldn't show up in routine bank checks. The goal was to leave just enough in her accessible accounts to handle basic living expenses for a couple of months. If Karen or Zane went snooping, they'd find her finances alarmingly depleted. The day she moved in, she sat on her new, second-hand couch and surveyed the dingy walls. The faint smell of stale cigarettes clung to the carpet, and the kitchen faucet dripped steadily. Despite the discomfort, she felt strangely liberated. For once, she was stepping away from her success, seeing the world from a vantage point that might reveal who really cared about her. Nia still ran Cypher Shield Labs remotely, but she publicly told her staff she was taking an indefinite leave of absence for health issues, instructing her executive team to keep the brand afloat in her stead. Privately, she monitored everything from her new laptop, making sure operations ran smoothly. Only her top executives knew the truth, that she was testing her family's intentions and that they should go along with the story of her company facing legal trouble. In the solitude of her smaller living space, Nia had time to reflect. Without the constant hum of luxury around her, she felt more at ease, even if the conditions weren't glamorous. She remembered how resourceful she'd been as a child, scraping together science projects with limited materials, determined to prove her worth. This was like returning to her roots, reminding herself of what mattered beyond money. Little did she know, her stepfamily was already reacting to her sudden disappearance. She would soon discover just how quickly love could turn into indifference, or betrayal, when the promise of wealth vanished. To set the final piece in motion, Nia asked Aunt Dee to casually mention to Karen that a massive lawsuit had hit Cypher Shield Labs and that Nia was effectively broke. She wanted the rumor to spread fast but not come directly from her lips, to make it more believable. Karen, upon hearing Aunt Dee's carefully crafted story, tried to call Nia multiple times. Each time, Nia let it go to voicemail. She would then respond with a short text, "I can't talk right now. I'm dealing with legal stuff." Within days, the rumor mill was churning. Former acquaintances and business contacts reached out, their messages peppered with sympathy. Some genuinely cared, others were fishing for gossip. But Karen's messages stood out. They transitioned from an initial show of concern to subtle questions about whether Nia still had any resources left to share. One evening, Nia decided to pick up Karen's call. She sat in her small apartment, the single overhead light casting shadows on the peeling wallpaper. "Where have you been?" Karen demanded the moment Nia said hello. "I'm sorry," Nia replied in a fatigued tone, "it's been overwhelming. The lawyers say I could lose all my assets if the court rules in favor of the plaintiff. My accounts are frozen, and I've had to sell most of my things." Karen was silent for a moment. "That's unfortunate. I just wish you had told us earlier, Nia. Family should stick together." Nia almost laughed at the hypocrisy, but she kept her composure. "I didn't want to worry anyone. Besides, there's nothing anyone can really do. I'm on my own with this." "I see." Karen paused, as though carefully choosing her next words. "Well, I hope you figure it out. By the way, I have to cover some unexpected expenses this month, Zane's car repairs, you know how it is. We were wondering if you could, help us out." "Just a short-term loan?" Nia's stomach twisted. The gall of this woman, to ask for a loan while believing Nia was broke. "Karen, I just told you I don't have any money. I might actually end up bankrupt." A hollow laugh came from the other line. "Oh, right, of course. Silly me." The conversation ended abruptly. Nia stared at her phone, a bitter taste in her mouth. They're not even hiding the fact that they only care about money, she thought. The heartbreak that came with this realization was swift and sharp, but it also hardened her resolve. In the following days, Nia dove deeper into her portrayal of a woman on the verge of financial collapse. She wore plain clothes, avoided expensive restaurants, and even visited food trucks or local diners for meals. Occasionally, she recognized a glimmer of pity in the eyes of people who once envied her success. Now, they saw her as a cautionary tale of how fast fortune could vanish. And so, the lie stood strong, weaving itself into every corner of Nia's life. Her ultimate goal, however, was not revenge, though she wouldn't deny there was some satisfaction in exposing Karen and Zane's greed. It was more about finding closure, about understanding if there was any thread of genuine affection in her stepfamily's hearts. If not, she would finally cut them off completely and move on. Days turned into a couple of weeks, and the family love Nia had been promised was nowhere to be found. Karen's calls were fewer and more perfunctory. Zane texted her a grand total of once, with a vague message, "Hope you're good. Let me know if anything changes." That was it. Nia found herself oscillating between anger and sadness. Part of her thought, "At least now I know," but another part ached, remembering the times she yearned for any form of maternal affection from Karen or brotherly camaraderie from Zane. One afternoon, while sipping instant coffee in her apartment, her phone buzzed with a new message from Karen. "There's a family matter we need to discuss. Call me ASAP." The urgency piqued Nia's curiosity. She dialed back, mentally preparing for whatever request or guilt trip would come next. Karen answered on the second ring. "Nia," she began, her voice tense, "thank goodness you called. I have a situation." Nia steeled herself. "What is it?" There was a calculated pause. Zane got himself into a small predicament. He owes some people money. It's not a big deal, but they're threatening legal action if he doesn't pay soon. Nia's eyebrows shot up. "How much does he owe?" Karen gave a number so large that Nia almost choked on her coffee. She coughed, carefully setting her mug down. "That's not small, Karen." "I know," Karen said with a sigh. "But Zane thought you might have connections. Maybe you could talk to your old investor friends and see if they'd lend him something? Or perhaps your company could still do something before you collapse entirely." The audacity stunned Nia. "Karen, I'm literally telling you I'm broke, and all you can think about is getting me to pay off Zane's debt?" Karen tried to backtrack. No, you misunderstand. It's not about the money. Well, okay, it is about the money, but we also care about you. We just thought maybe we could help each other out." Nia's chest tightened. Help each other out? She found no words to respond. Instead, she hung up, ignoring Karen's desperate hello. Nia, at the other end. She stared at the phone for a full minute, heart pounding in her ears. Karen's call confirmed her worst fears. They weren't concerned about her welfare at all. They merely saw her as a potential bailout, even in her supposedly dire straits. Feeling a surge of newfound determination, Nia decided it was time to cut them off entirely. But before she did, she realized she needed one final act, a definitive confrontation to lay everything out in the open. No more illusions about love or loyalty. A showdown was on the horizon. Later that evening, Nia received a call from Zane himself. Unlike his mother, Zane wasted no time with pleasantries. "Hey," he said, his tone as casual as if he were asking for a beer at a bar, "I know things are shaky for you right now, but I think you're overblowing it. You've always got angles, right? Funds stashed somewhere? You're just being dramatic." Nia's hand tightened around her phone. "Why would I lie about this, Zane? The company is under a huge lawsuit, my accounts are basically frozen, and I'm living in a rundown apartment. What part of that screams dramatic?" He scoffed. "Come on, you always land on your feet. You have that inheritance from Grandpa Roy, or so I heard. You've got enough to at least tide me over. I'll pay you back once I get some more investing gigs lined up." "Are you even listening to yourself?" she seethed. "If I actually had any money, do you think I'd be living like this? I wouldn't have sold my car, left my penthouse, or shut down my social media if I was still rolling in cash." There was a smug silence. "This is just one of your fancy illusions," Zane finally said. "You probably just want to see who sticks around." "Well, guess what? I'm sticking around. Just, not out of charity. I need that money." Nia's blood boiled. So he suspected her charade but still wanted to exploit it for his own gain? She felt physically ill. The betrayal was too blatant, too disgusting. "How dare you," she said, her voice trembling. "You never cared about me at all. You just want a payday." "Don't be dramatic," Zane replied, a hint of panic creeping into his voice. "Look, I'm your brother. We're family. Doesn't family help each other out?" Nia inhaled, trying to steady herself. "Then why haven't you helped me, Zane? Why haven't you visited? Why do you only call when you want money?" He stammered, "Life's been hectic. And I just thought you could handle yourself. You're the success story, right?" Nia's eyes burned. She ended the call without another word, tears threatening to spill. Every word out of Zane's mouth had been a confirmation that her darkest suspicions were true. She grabbed a pen and paper, jotting down everything she wanted to say to them, trying to channel the swirl of emotions into something coherent. She knew she couldn't just continue the ruse without closure. She needed a final confrontation, a moment to expose the lies and manipulations once and for all. Outside, the streetlights blinked to life, casting a dull glow through her dingy window. She felt torn between heartbreak and righteous anger. But one thing was certain, she could no longer keep this facade going without a plan to end it, and to cut off Karen and Zane if necessary. After that heated conversation with Zane, Nia expected a flurry of texts or calls from Karen and Zane, trying to cajole or sweet-talk her into giving them money. Instead, she heard nothing. Days passed. The silence was deafening. She occasionally checked her phone, half relieved and half disturbed that no messages popped up. She spent her time reviewing updates from Cypher Shield Labs, overseeing critical projects from afar without letting the staff know her precise location. Aunt Dee visited one afternoon, bringing groceries and a warm smile that Nia found comforting. "You eating okay, sweetheart?" Aunt Dee asked, noticing how sparsely furnished the kitchen was. "I'm managing," Nia replied. She motioned to the small table where they could sit. The space was cramped, but Aunt Dee made it feel like home just by being there. Over tea, they discussed how thoroughly Karen and Zane had vanished. Aunt Dee frowned. I expected this, but it still hurts. They haven't contacted me either, except for one message Karen sent asking if you'd given me any money to pass along. I told her to stop asking. Nia sighed, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I'm not surprised. At this point, I've all but confirmed everything I needed to know. Aunt Dee reached across the table and placed a hand over Nia's. I'm proud of you, you know. Not because you're rich or successful, but because you're strong enough to face this. Many people would just keep pretending, never daring to see the truth about the people who claim to love them. Nia squeezed her aunt's hand. Thank you. Honestly, I'm scared about what happens next. If I reveal the truth, they'll either beg or become hostile. Either way, I don't want them in my life if they're only interested in money. Aunt Dee offered a sad smile. Remember, you can choose who's in your life. You have that power. That evening, after Aunt Dee left, Nia sat alone in the dimly lit living room, pondering her next move. The radio silence from her stepfamily spoke volumes. She realized it was time to rip off the bandage entirely. She would orchestrate a final gathering, one that would force them to show up, face her, and discover the truth about her finances and their own manipulative behavior. The idea formed in her mind like a slow dawn, illuminating everything in its path. Invite them all for a dinner, pretend to say goodbye, and then drop the truth. She'd confront them about Grandpa Roy's will, the lawsuit that never was, and every vile thing they'd done. For better or worse, that confrontation would free her from the weight she'd carried for years. With renewed resolve, she turned off the lights, letting the darkness envelop her. Her heart beat with a strange mix of anticipation and dread. Yet, in that moment, she sensed she was inching closer to a liberating finish line. Despite Aunt Dee having just come by, she returned a few days later, this time unannounced. Nia opened the door to find her aunt holding a pot of homemade soup and a container of fresh rolls. Her face looked more serious than before. Nia, we need to talk, Aunt Dee said, stepping inside. Confusion tugged at Nia. Sure, come in. They settled in the living room, the pot of soup warming the otherwise stale air. Aunt Dee placed the food on the coffee table and turned to Nia, eyes glistening. I've been holding on to something for a while. Something your grandfather left in my care. Nia's heart skipped a beat. Grandpa Roy? You mean, more of the inheritance? Aunt Dee nodded. Not exactly. It's a letter, addressed to you. He wrote it not long before he passed. He asked me to give it to you when I felt the time was right. I think that time is now. Reaching into her purse, Aunt Dee withdrew a sealed envelope with Nia's name scrawled across it in an old-fashioned, shaky script. Nia recognized her grandfather's handwriting instantly. Tears pricked her eyes as she took the envelope, her hands trembling slightly. Thank you, Aunt Dee, Nia whispered, leaning forward to hug her. Aunt Dee patted her back. I'll give you some privacy. I'll be in the kitchen making tea. Nia carefully tore open the envelope. The letter inside read, My dearest Nia. If you're reading this, it means your Aunt Dee believed you were ready to know how I truly felt. I've watched you grow under difficult circumstances, losing your mother too soon, then losing your father, and living with a stepfamily that never seemed to cherish you the way you deserve. You must remember that you are worthy of love, regardless of your wealth or achievements. My inheritance is a tool, not a testament to your worth. You've always had the strength to stand on your own. I left you everything because I trust you to honor our family's legacy and to share your blessings with those who genuinely care for you. Be cautious with those who see you only as a meal ticket. Trust your instincts, and never apologize for wanting to be loved for who you are. I suspect you'll face a moment when you must decide who gets to share in your life and who must be left behind. When that day comes, remember, you owe your stepfamily nothing but honesty. If they cannot give you genuine love, they have no place by your side. I love you, my little bird, and I am proud of the woman you've become. Grandpa Roy. By the time she finished reading, tears cascaded down Nia's cheeks. She pressed the letter against her heart, feeling an overwhelming surge of gratitude and sorrow. Aunt Dee peeked in, concern etched on her face. Nia swallowed hard, dabbing her tears with a tissue. He knew, Aunt Dee. He always knew. Aunt Dee sat beside her, placing an arm around her shoulders. He wanted to protect you from their greed. That's why he kept the will a secret until after he passed. Nia inhaled a shaky breath. Well, I'm going to honor his wish. I'm setting up a dinner to finally reveal everything. It's time they see who they really are, and who I am without them. Aunt Dee nodded, eyes shining with approval. Good. You deserve peace, child. Nia carefully folded the letter back into its envelope, already feeling a weight lift from her chest. She had clarity now: face them, reveal the truth, and accept whatever fallout comes next. The next day, Nia invited Aunt Dee back to her apartment and laid out her entire plan. She confessed how the lawsuit was fabricated, how her accounts were actually fine, and how she'd been monitoring Cypher Shield Labs from the shadows. Every step was meticulously crafted to see whether Karen and Zane's concern for her was genuine or purely transactional. Aunt Dee listened with rapt attention, occasionally nodding. When Nia finished, Aunt Dee gave her a hug. You're braver than you realize, my dear. They probably won't respond kindly when you tell them, but you have to do what you must. Nia nodded, her hands shaking slightly. I'll invite them to a special dinner, make it sound like I'm saying goodbye before I slip into total bankruptcy or something. That should lure them in. She hesitated, then asked the question that had haunted her. Aunt Dee, am I being cruel? Aunt Dee's expression softened. No, sweetheart. You're giving them a chance, one final chance, to show they care. If they fail, that's on them, not you. That evening, Nia sent out a round of texts to Karen and Zane. I've made a decision regarding the lawsuit and my financial situation. I'd like to invite you both to a final dinner at restaurant name this Friday. It's important to me that we talk, face to face, about what's next. Please come. Within an hour, she got a flurry of responses. Karen, oh, darling, of course we'll be there. I'm so worried about you. Let's talk everything through. Zane, all right, I'm in. Maybe we can figure out a solution that benefits us all. Nia exhaled heavily, placing her phone aside. They're coming, she told Aunt Dee, who was tidying up in the kitchen. Aunt Dee paused, then smiled wryly. They think they'll benefit, don't they? That's exactly why they'll show up, Nia replied, feeling a knot in her stomach. They think they'll get one last piece of the pie. But she had her own surprise in store, one that would leave them speechless and, quite possibly, out of her life for good. Friday arrived, bringing an unseasonably cool breeze that swept through the city. Nia chose a quiet, upscale restaurant near the waterfront. She arranged a private room, wanting enough privacy to handle the emotional confrontation without curious onlookers. She got there early, wearing an elegant but understated black dress. She kept her hair in a simple updo and wore minimal jewelry, no outward signs of wealth that might give away her plan prematurely. Aunt Dee was the first to arrive, giving Nia an encouraging nod before taking her seat in a corner of the room. They agreed that Aunt Dee would remain mostly silent, serving as emotional support. Karen and Zane walked in next, dressed a bit more ostentatiously than necessary. Karen wore a flashy scarf with brand logos, and Zane sported a designer watch that Nia suspected he'd borrowed or bought with debt. Darling, you look pale, Karen said, eyes scanning Nia's face. Are you okay? Nia gestured to the table. Let's sit. I have a lot to say. They settled in, waiters bringing water and menus. A tense stillness filled the room as Karen and Zane exchanged curious glances. Zane cleared his throat. So, about your financial situation, is it as bad as we feared? Nia folded her hands on the table. Yes, and no. She paused, letting the silence heighten the tension. The lawsuit was real, at least in theory, but it's not what you think. Karen fidgeted. What do you mean? Nia took a slow breath. I orchestrated a story. A story that made you both believe I was going broke. My social media disappearance, selling my car, moving to a smaller apartment, it was all to see whether you actually cared about me or just about my money. Karen's eyes widened, and she glanced at Zane in alarm. He nearly choked on his water. You faked all that? He sputtered. Yes, Nia replied, her voice steady. I had to know. For years, I've suspected that you only see me as a wallet. And you proved me right. Karen's jaw dropped, her face turning a shade of crimson. How could you do this to us? We were worried sick. Nia shot her a pointed look. Worried sick? Let's recount. You both barely called, except to ask about money. Zane demanded I pay his debts. Karen hinted I should find a way to finance your lifestyles. When it seemed I was no longer able to do so, you both went radio silent. Zane tried to interrupt, but Nia held up a hand. I'm not finished. The truth is, the company is fine, better than fine. My finances are intact, and I was never in danger of losing Cypher Shield Labs. You two had every opportunity to show genuine concern, but all you did was reveal your greed. Karen's voice wavered. This is ridiculous. We're family. Family helps each other, especially when money is involved. That's exactly the problem, Nia snapped. You see me as a cash machine. And it's time you knew something else, Grandpa Roy's inheritance. He left everything to me, years ago. You two got nothing, and he made sure of it because he saw right through you. Karen went pale. That can't be true. There must be some clause. There isn't, Nia cut in. In fact, you tried contesting it in secret, didn't you? Karen's face fell. The color drained from her cheeks. How did you know? Aunt Dee, silent until now, spoke up. Because the lawyer called me after you filed the paperwork, Karen. Grandpa Roy's will was airtight. Your challenge went nowhere. Zane's voice shook with anger. So you're telling me we've been cut out of everything, and you've just been lying to us all this time? Nia fixed him with a steely gaze. The only lying I did was about being broke. Everything else was your own assumption, that you had any claim to my success. You don't. Karen and Zane looked at each other, panic mounting. Nia braced herself for the next wave of excuses, pleas, or accusations. But all they could manage were incoherent stutters, like cornered animals unsure whether to flee or fight. In that moment, the balance of power shifted irrevocably. Nia felt oddly calm, as though a massive weight had finally lifted from her shoulders. No matter what they did or said next, her truth had been laid bare, and her destiny was now her own. A suffocating silence took hold of the private room. Karen appeared stunned, her mind visibly racing to formulate a response. Zane stared at the tabletop, a slight flush creeping up his neck. Finally, Karen mustered a tremulous smile. Nia, dear, we might have misstepped. But please understand, we did it out of love. We just wanted you to share your good fortune with us, your family. Nia's frustration flared, but she kept her composure. Love? You call constant manipulation love? You threatened to twist legal loopholes to get Grandpa's inheritance, and you only turned up at my door when you needed money. Zane, looking cornered, tried a different tactic. All right, maybe we went about it the wrong way. But that doesn't mean we don't care about you, Nia. Look, you're obviously still loaded. We can all work this out together, can't we? Aunt Dee interjected with a sharp tone. Unbelievable. After everything that's been said, all you two can think about is the money? Have you considered apologizing or acknowledging the pain you caused Nia? Karen's eyes flickered with resentment. All right, we're sorry. Happy? She shifted her gaze back to Nia, voice trembling with frustration. Look, we have bills to pay, responsibilities. You think it's easy living the way we do without any real support? Nia sighed. She had expected this. Millions of people manage their responsibilities without siphoning off others. Don't pretend you're victims. Zayn threw his hands up. So what now? You just set this trap, humiliated us, and then what, leave us out to dry? This isn't a trap, Nia corrected. It's the truth. And what happens next is up to you. I've set this dinner to tell you face to face, I'm done letting you exploit me. I'm done lying about my situation. From here on, you'll see exactly how serious I am about cutting ties if you can't respect me or genuinely care for me beyond what I can give you. Karen's face contorted in anger. Are you threatening us? We're your family, for God's sake. A dark chuckle escaped Nia's lips. Funny how you only remember we're family when there's money on the line. Zayn leaned forward, voice nearly a hiss. Don't act so righteous. You've been hiding this huge inheritance, hoarding it for yourself. Nia shook her head. I used it to build a company that employs hundreds of people. I've also quietly donated to charities and helped Aunt Dee with her medical bills. Not that it's any of your business, but I'm not hoarding anything. I'm just choosing not to hand it over to your bottomless pit of greed. They glared at each other across the table, the tension almost tangible. Aunt Dee cleared her throat. I think Nia's been more than fair. She gave you a chance to prove you cared. You both failed. Maybe now is the time to accept that or try to mend your ways. Karen's mouth opened and closed, no words forming. Zayn, equally flustered, slumped in his chair. The trap Nia had set was nothing more than a mirror showing them their reflection. The real question was whether they had the courage to change. Dinner was served, though no one was in the mood to eat. The table held plates of gourmet cuisine, but the tension in the air made every bite feel forced. Nia realized she still had one more reveal to make. She reached into her handbag and withdrew a copy of Grandpa Roy's will. Here, she said, sliding the document across the table. This is a copy. It outlines exactly how Grandpa Roy wanted his estate divided. Karen and Zayn both leaned in to read it, their eyes darting across the text. Their faces fell when they saw the line explicitly stating that all major assets belonged to Nia, with a small stipend offered to Aunt Dee if she chose to accept it. Karen huffed. He must have been coerced. This can't be legal. It's completely legal, Aunt Dee said. You tried to contest it before and failed. Zayn pushed the paper aside as though it burned his fingers. So that's it? We get nothing? After all we've done? Done for me? Nia cut in with a bitter laugh. You've done nothing but belittle me or demand money. Grandpa Roy saw it, which is why he left you nothing. He wanted to make sure you couldn't exploit me the way you tried to exploit Dad. Karen's voice rose, losing the last vestiges of composure. That old man always had it out for me. He never welcomed me into the family. Nia glared at her. Maybe if you had shown genuine kindness, he would have felt differently. Zayn banged his fist on the table, rattling the dishes. So where does that leave us? Are you cutting us off entirely? Nia exhaled, her gaze steady. That depends on you. If you're ready to own up to your behavior, apologize sincerely, and make an effort to rebuild trust, maybe there's hope. But if you're just going to keep playing victim and demanding money, then yes, I'm cutting you off. Karen and Zayn exchanged looks filled with confusion and fury. Karen twisted her napkin in her hands, lips quivering. She made an attempt at a remorseful tone. We did wrong by you. We see that now. But you have to understand, life hasn't been easy for us either. Nia's eyes narrowed. I'm sorry for the difficulties you've faced. But those don't justify how you treated me. Save your excuses. If you truly want to change, show it through actions, not words. A hush fell over the table. Karen's eyes flickered, possibly calculating a new angle. Zane cleared his throat and murmured a half-hearted apology, but it fell flat. They were cornered, and everyone knew it. Nia stood up, signaling the end of the discussion. The night is over. I've said everything I came to say. Karen and Zane seemed unsure whether to leave or continue arguing. Aunt Dee rose too, smoothing her skirt. The waiter appeared, hesitant about interrupting such palpable tension. Nia grabbed the check, quietly paying for the meal with her personal card. I'll be in touch, she said, her voice tinged with finality. Or not, depending on your next moves. Without another glance, Nia and Aunt Dee exited the private room, leaving Karen and Zane behind in shocked silence. Outside, the waterfront air felt crisp and clean. Nia breathed deeply, feeling an electric charge of relief mixed with sadness. The big reveal was done. Now she braced herself for the fallout. The days following the dinner were tumultuous. Karen launched a series of frantic phone calls and text messages, alternating between tearful apologies and outraged rants. Zane sent sporadic messages, each one attempting a different angle. Sometimes he threatened legal action, other times he tried to guilt-trip Nia about abandoning family. Nia, however, stood firm. She responded to neither Karen nor Zane. She had laid out her conditions clearly. If they truly wanted to mend the relationship, they needed to demonstrate genuine effort, not manipulations or demands. During this period, Aunt Dee stayed close by, offering moral support. One afternoon, as Nia sorted through an inbox clogged with messages from Karen, Aunt Dee made them both hot chocolate. How do you feel? Aunt Dee asked gently, handing Nia a steaming mug. Nia sighed, her shoulders slumping. Tired, mostly. I didn't realize how exhausting it would be to finally confront them. Aunt Dee nodded. Confrontation drains the spirit. But remember, you did what you had to. They showed their true colors. Now, the ball's in their court. Indeed, it was. But each new voicemail from Karen left Nia feeling more certain that the pair was incapable of genuine change. She played one such voicemail on speaker for Aunt Dee to hear. Karen's voice, shaking with anger, Nia, I've tried being nice. Clearly you don't care about anyone but yourself. How dare you humiliate us like that? If you think you can keep that inheritance forever, think again. We're talking to a lawyer next week. Aunt Dee gave Nia a grim look. They're still at it, huh? Nia deleted the voicemail. Yes. They don't understand that they have no legal ground to stand on. Grandpa Roy's will is unbreakable. Day after day, the messages continued, sometimes vile, sometimes plaintive. Nia woke up every morning feeling an icy knot in her stomach, anticipating another guilt-laden call. But she refused to cave. She remained resolute in her decision to cut off the negativity, even if it meant severing the last ties to her father's side of the family. Yet, as time passed, the chaos began to die down. Whether Karen and Zane had finally realized the futility of their efforts or had grown tired of banging on a locked door, their communication dwindled. 2 weeks after the explosive dinner, Nia's phone was eerily quiet. It seemed that the final break had occurred. On a crisp Tuesday morning, Nia woke up in her modest apartment and realized she felt lighter, calmer. She made herself coffee and gazed out the window, noticing the soft glow of the sunrise for the first time in weeks. She had cut loose the anchors of greed and manipulation. Now, all that remained was to step forward, unburdened. With her step-family drama behind her, Nia contemplated how best to honor Grandpa Roy's memory. She recalled how he had always championed charity, especially for causes that helped underprivileged youth. Nia decided to make a grand gesture, one that would not only seal her independence from Karen and Zane but also pay tribute to the man who had believed in her from the start. She set up a major philanthropic foundation in Grandpa Roy's name, the Roy Johnson Future Innovators Fund. The foundation would offer grants, scholarships, and mentorship programs for young people with big dreams but limited resources. Nia invested a significant portion of her inheritance into the fund, ensuring it would sustain itself for years. The day she publicly announced the foundation was the day she returned to social media with a statement that read, "I've taken time away for personal reasons and have emerged with a renewed sense of purpose. Today, I'm proud to introduce the Nia Johnson Future Innovators Fund, dedicated to providing opportunities for aspiring minds across the country. This endeavor honors the legacy of my grandfather, who taught me the value of determination, compassion, and staying true to oneself." Predictably, the announcement went viral. Business publications praised her altruism. Tech outlets highlighted how the fund could shape the next generation of coders, engineers, and innovators. Through it all, Nia remained graceful, deflecting excessive praise and focusing on the foundation's mission. Meanwhile, Karen and Zane's final attempts to contact her came in the form of scathing messages accusing her of wasting money on charity instead of helping family. Nia rolled her eyes at their gall. Their words no longer stung, she recognized them for what they were, desperate attempts to reclaim some financial advantage. By establishing the foundation, Nia had effectively shut the door on Karen and Zane ever getting their hands on her fortune. Donating a chunk of her wealth wasn't just about generosity, it was a statement of independence. She had made a power move that aligned with her values and Grandpa Roy's legacy, one that left Karen and Zane no room to manipulate or profit from her. She stood in the new foundation's small office space, a converted loft downtown, watching volunteers set up desks and computers. Boxes of books and supplies for future scholarship recipients were neatly stacked along the walls. A sense of accomplishment surged through her. This was the family she chose to cultivate, people bonded by a shared vision, not by blood ties that only ran skin deep. In that moment, she felt lighter than she had in years. She looked up at a framed photo of Grandpa Roy she'd placed on her new desk. A smile tugged at her lips. "Thank you," she whispered. "I hope you'd be proud." On a warm spring afternoon, months after the big reveal and the fallout with her stepfamily, Nia found herself in a serene park. She sat on a wooden bench beneath a lush canopy of trees, the sun's rays peeking through the leaves and dancing across the ground. A gentle breeze rustled the branches overhead. She often came here to clear her head, to think about the winding path she had traversed, the childhood loneliness, the manipulative stepfamily, the meteoric rise in the tech world, and finally, the dramatic test of love that ended with her walking away from toxicity. Now, she was at peace. Truly at peace. Aunt Dee strolled up to her with a paper bag of lunch. "Hungry?" she asked, handing Nia a sandwich. Nia grinned, accepting the food. "Starving, actually." "Thank you." They ate in companionable silence for a while, people watching as families laughed and couples walked dogs. Eventually, Aunt Dee spoke, "Have you heard anything more from Karen or Zane?" Nia shook her head. "No. Last I heard, they were struggling with debt and possibly downsizing their home. But that's none of my business anymore. I've washed my hands of them." Aunt Dee gave a gentle nod. "I'm proud of you, sweetheart. Not because you have money or a successful company, but because you broke free from a cycle of toxicity. That's a rare kind of strength." Nia felt her heart swell with gratitude. She leaned her head on Aunt Dee's shoulder, letting the warmth of the day envelop them. Memories of her father and Grandpa Roy floated through her mind. Though they were gone, she felt their love guiding her still. In the distance, a group of children ran around a playground, their carefree giggles filling the air. Nia saw in their laughter the promise of a brighter future, a future her foundation would help shape for countless young minds. She felt a contentment she hadn't experienced in a long time, untainted by greed, suspicion, or doubt. She closed her eyes, allowing the sweet, fresh air to fill her lungs. The swirl of emotions that had once consumed her, anxiety, anger, betrayal, had ebbed, replaced by a quiet resolve and a renewed sense of self-worth. Turning to Aunt Dee, she said, "I think I'm finally ready to move on. To stop looking over my shoulder and just live." Aunt Dee smiled, her eyes crinkling. "Then live, my dear." You've earned it. Nia took a deep breath and gazed at the world around her, feeling more alive than ever. She had overcome the scars of a cold stepmother and a greedy stepbrother. She had built her own empire, tested the loyalty of those who claimed to love her, and emerged stronger, armed with the truth and unwavering self-respect. In that single moment, she knew she was free. Free to chart her own course, to give generously to those who truly needed it, and to surround herself with people who valued her soul as much as her success. And that, at long last, was the peace she had yearned for since she was a lonely little girl in a house full of secrets. With that realization, Nia stood from the bench, savoring the simple joy of the sunshine on her face and the comforting presence of Aunt Dee by her side. There, in that peaceful park, Nia's new chapter began, a chapter written on her own terms, unburdened by the greed that once overshadowed her life, and guided by the unwavering love and legacy of those who truly cared. The end.